Hi. So, are you wondering what it takes to become a software engineer in 2024? Don't worry, I got you. So, in this video, I'm going to cover every aspect there is for being a software engineer in 2024. So, let's get started. Now, the first of all, the thing is that you have to pick up a programming language. So, there are two categories of programming languages. There are high-level languages like Python and low-level languages like C++. So to take an example, let's take Python in the case of high-level language and C++ in the case of low-level language. So Python runs through an interpreter, okay, and C++ is pre-compiled, okay. So what does that mean? It is that C++ before running its code compiles its code by a compiler and then executes it. So if there are any errors in your C++ program, then the compiler will fail to compile, and you would get to know your errors beforehand only. But in the case of Python, it does not happen in the same way. Python, in real time, you get to know your errors, okay? Other than that, Python is also easy to read and understand. But on the other hand, C++ includes predefined syntaxes and structure that makes it difficult to understand. So that is why if someone wants to learn a programming language quickly, then Python is the way to go. Other than that, Python is also slower than C++, and C++ is faster than Python, being a low-level language. Also, Python is easier to maintain and C++ is difficult to maintain. And the last point, Python is dynamic. Since it is not pre-compiled by a compiler, it automatically becomes a dynamic language, and C++ is a static language. Okay, so now since we have a good grip on a programming language, how to pick a programming language, so let's go to the next steps. Okay, so here we can see a flowchart which tells us that there are multiple fields in the field of software engineer. For example, you can become a full stack web developer, a mobile app developer, a data scientist, QA engineer, and DevOps engineer. Okay, but if you take a close look, data structures and algorithms is quite crucial before picking any one of these niches. Okay, so what is data structures and algorithms? So data structures and algorithms are some ways by which you can structure your program, like the choices of data structures you make to store your data, to transpose your data, to modify your data. It all depends on data structures. Now, what does data structures do? Data structures helps optimize your code if you use them correctly according to your program, and it severely reduces the time complexity. That means for large amount of data input, your code will run efficiently and faster. Okay, now since we're done with data structures, let's take a look at full stack web development. So full stack web development has two further subcategories. Those are front end and back end development. Okay, we will talk about that later, but you can do full stack web development in JavaScript, Java, and Python. Okay, now shifting to mobile app development. There are two main mobile app development sides. Those are iOS app development and Android app development. For iOS app development, you require to learn the Swift language, and for Android, you require Kotlin. Okay, now moving on to data science. Okay, if you are passionate about machine learning and want to be a machine learning engineer or an artificial intelligence engineer, data science is the way to go. Okay, you have to use Python in data science. It is the main language, and all the frameworks are built around Python. Okay, so if data science is something that suits you, then you should learn Python. Okay, next we have QA engineer. QA is also known as quality assurance engineer. So the basic function of a QA engineer is to figure out the bugs and fix all the bugs. Okay, now there are two ways to do that. One is manual testing, where you manually check for bugs, and one is automation testing. So automation testing, as the name suggests, you use softwares to check any bugs present. So for example, Selenium is a framework which QA engineers use. Okay, now after that we have DevOps engineer. Okay, so DevOps engineer is also known as a cloud engineer, and their main functionality is to integrate CI/CD pipelines and just cloud networking and all that. Okay, so to be a DevOps engineer, you can either learn Python or Java. Both will work. Okay. So till now, you might have noticed that a lot of these subcategories of a software engineer can be done using Python. So since it's a high level language, many of these can be achieved by using Python. Okay, so now since we have the basics of all of these, let's move ahead with some of the data structures and algorithms. Okay, so here we have a list of some data structures that are arrays, stacks, queues, linked lists, trees, hash maps, and graphs. Okay, all of these are different data structures, and I'm sure you are quite familiar with them already. And even if you are not, you can always drop me a comment and I can start a new series on data structures and algorithms where I will teach each and every one of these data structures and algorithms. Okay. Other than these data structures, we can see searching and sorting algorithms are also present here. So these are some of the algorithms, and some other complex algorithms include Kruskal's algorithm, all the shortest path finding algorithms like A star, Dijatra's algorithm, etc. Okay, now since we are done with data structures and algorithms and what they are in a very brief sense, okay, so now we can move ahead to full stack web development. Okay, now since I am proficient in full stack web development, so we will take a closer look at full stack web development. Okay, so let's go ahead. So full stack development, as I mentioned before, comprises of front end development, back end development, and database management. Okay, so what is front end? Okay, it is the visible part of the website or web application which is responsible for user experience. Suppose you log into any website, say google.com. Okay, so the first thing you see, all the things you see actually for that matter on that web page is the front end for that website. Okay, so that is all about front end. Now let's go to the back end. So back end refers to the server side development of a web application. Okay, with the primary focus on how websites work. Okay, it is responsible for managing the database through queries and APIs by client-side commands. Okay, so suppose you're on google.com. Okay, you search something, so that search is sent to the backend through an API call which is mentioned. Okay, and then the backend delivers the response to the front end, and that's how the whole system works. Okay, suppose in the front end you have a form which you have to submit. Okay, so all the information of the form will be submitted to the backend, and the backend will then push that information to store in the database. Okay, so coming on to database management, it stores the data from the front end which is relayed through the backend. Okay, so I'm sure this is pretty clear by the naming scheme as well, that the database stores the data. Okay, now let's move on to little demonstration which we will do right now. Okay, so let me just okay, so okay, so here we have two boxes for demonstration purposes. Let's name one front end and the other back end. Okay, so yeah, and we can create this. Okay, so this is our database. Okay, now generally in front end you might be aware that we use HTML and CSS. Okay, so the ways of building a front end are HTML and CSS, which are combined and used together. Okay, but other than this, there are many frameworks as well which are available for use. So let us take an example of such a framework, and it is React.js. Okay, you might be knowing of React. It is very much common these days to use React, and it is a very interactive and nice framework. Okay, now for backend we have our Node.js in this case, and we combine and use it with our Express server. Okay, so I'll explain to you what these are. Okay, so now in Node.js is a JavaScript server. It's a single threaded server which handles all the requests and get and post requests. Okay, and Express.js is a light framework which is built on top of Node.js, and these are generally used together because Express is a lightweight server and they run together flawlessly. Okay, Express is the most famous server which is used with our Node.js. Okay, now let's see. Okay, that's how our front end and back end communicate with each other. Okay, so the front end posts data by using the post request and gets back data from the back end using the get request. Okay, similarly backend also communicates with the database by backend posts data to the database and gets data, okay, from the database as well. Okay, now other than this I would also like to add that the backend also handles the authentication of your program. Okay, so it can be Google OAuth 2, JavaScript Web Tokens, JWTs, anything. Okay, your backend will handle the authentication for you. Okay, and one more thing that I would like to mention is that your front end compiles as a static package. Okay, and on the other hand your backend is always dynamic. So what does that mean? It is that when you export your front end, that is you compile and export your front end into a HTML file, okay, and JavaScript accompanied files. Okay, so whenever you upload your front end to a website, okay, and you open the URL, so the front end being static renders at that time when it receives the request. Okay, but backend on the other hand being dynamic, it always has to be running. Okay, it is not like that you open your front end and then the backend will start up. No, it's not like that. It's dynamic, so it has to keep on running. Okay, and for the database we can use MongoDB in this case. Okay, so let me just write MongoDB. Okay, so now let's see, we have a React for the front end, Node and Express, a combination of Node and Express for backend, and our MongoDB as our database. Okay, so if you notice, this makes up the MERN stack. Okay, so what is MERN? M stands for your MongoDB, E stands for Express.js, R stands for React, and N stands for Node. So this is a very famous stack, and this stack is very much in demand these days. Okay, other than that, this is a very vague explanation of how the backend works. Okay, and that's all.